What's going on, guys? Waco and Constant Kwong from the Revolution Watch Bar. So let's go back in time to 2005. What were you doing in your life in 2005?
Dude, what the fuck? Oh, shit. I just started secondary school at then.
Oh, okay.
I was like 12 or 13 years old. 13 years old, I think.
Were you a good student?
Unfortunately not, but mischievous. I'm not a bad student, but I'm mischievous.
You know, honestly, I have to say I was a pretty terrible student. I mean, I would feel when I applied myself, I did well in school, but unfortunately, I was very distracted. I was growing up in New York. I was like a teenager, you know, and so my school uniform was a coat and tie, and then when I discovered that if you're wearing a coat and tie, right, and you walk into a bar, even if you're 14 years old, the likelihood of them serving you is actually pretty high, right? Especially because for Asians, they can't really tell what your age is.
What?
So unfortunately, I had several years of misspent youth in New York City.
Really? Wow.
Dressed very nicely.
That's very cool.
So much so that now, many years later, I never leave my house, right? I have no desire to go out whatsoever.
You know what? I guess I share the same sentiments as well. Yeah.
And but 2005 was also a very interesting year from a watch perspective, right? I don't want to say only because I launched Revolution in 2005, but March in 2005 was the very first issue of Revolution. And also from a watch perspective, we're talking about, let's see, 2005 was Opus 5. Right?
Exactly. Yeah.
So you have really the introduction of like really avant-gardist three-dimensional time telling. It was also when Max left Harry Winston. So Max Büchel left Harry Winston to create MB&F. And so his first watch, HM1, I think he basically had started to explain what it was. And we're really in an interesting period because people are looking for different interpretations of time. What is the hottest brand in 2005?
Oh, I gotta say, it's Panerai.
Yes.
Yeah,
so in 2005, Panerai is king, right?
I remember that era actually because my first luxury watch was actually a Panerai.
Absolutely, mine too. PAM 61 titanium tobacco dial.
PAM 1351 tobacco dial titanium.
Nice. Okay, so in the context of this era, everyone is looking for, I would say, larger or even oversized watches, especially in today's context, with a really strong, unique sense of identity. And I have to say that one watch that absolutely redefined that era was the Bell & Ross BR-01.
You know that's funny because I remember this era, you know, when exactly when people are all buying Panerais, you know, back then it wasn't there isn't like other big brands that has the same kind of impact, you know, as Panerai. But I gotta say, man, the BR-03 it was quite an icon in my days, especially in the mid 2000s, right?
Right.
A lot of watch guys, older watch guys, especially youngers, we can't afford a really big watch back then. But yeah, it was an iconic watch, man. I gotta say. And I remember that.
You know, I like it when something has its own unique identity and it's not trying to draw from any other watch brand, right? And actually, Bruno Belemich, who is the partner of Carlos Rosillo, together they form Bell & Ross, right? He actually was inspired by an aviation clock, and we're going to show you an image of that right now. So as you can see, the iconography of this is very pure. Why? Because when you're in the cockpit, you need to be able to see an aviation clock or instrument with the greatest visibility possible because probably your plane is like moving around. You probably have some sort of eyewear on. Visibility is key. And there's a utilitarianness about this instrument that really spoke to him. And he was like, what if I could translate this into a wristwatch, right? And his very first wristwatch, which was created in 2005, the BR-01, I would say is as revolutionary as the Luminor Marina or any of those key iconic watches from that era in its completely original design iconography, right? But it was really big.
It is.
So the BR-01, and we have the anniversary edition of it, the original watch was 46 mm in diameter. And while you guys may say, hey, that's really big, as I just did, you have to understand in the context of 2005, that was the size.
Yeah, people were buying minimum 44 mm.
In fact, Panerai was increasing their sizes from 44 to 47. Exactly.
Yes, exactly.
Royal Oak Offshore was going from 42 to 44. So everything was increasing
very
in size,
big,
right? Now, sometimes when you take a little watch and you just make it bigger, I believe there's a Cartier called the Santos 100. Do you remember that? It kind of like loses its identity a little bit because I've always thought of Cartiers as being extremely elegant watches. And when you make it really bulky, it looks, I don't know, a little
It doesn't,
strange. It's a little odd.
Yeah, it's a little bit odd, yeah.
However, when you have a watch that was born to be larger in format because it's coming from a utilitarian purpose, like the BR-01, it works perfectly. So this is the BR-01. This is actually the 10th anniversary version of it. This was also the piece that introduced ceramic to the Bell & Ross iconography.
Oh, yeah, the previous one was it was with black PVD, right, instead of ceramic.
So it started off in black PVD, but it was just, you know, that's it. It was just pure. It was like a round dial in a square case. It had, and it's kind of funny because I think all great watch designs from that era, or maybe all great sporting watch designs, always seem to have visible screws. And
Okay.
visible screws. This time, not on the bezel, but on the watch case as well. 4 in each of the cardinal points. And it was such a powerful watch from a evocation perspective that it was even used in Ralph Lauren ads.
Really?
Yeah, you know, the incredible thing is that Ralph Lauren saw this watch, and this is before he had properly launched his own watch brand, and he's a watch guy as well. And if you look at a lot of the old ads, you'll see that sometimes he incorporates a vintage Rolex, you know? Sometimes he incorporates a vintage Cartier. I think vintage Cartier in particular was something that he was...
Does he sell them, or like what was going on?
No, not at all. He just likes, because again, he's a guy that loves watches. When you're creating a story about a person, right, the watch that he's wearing identifies, you know...
Kind of like his personality.
Yeah, exactly.
Represents him, yeah.
And so in some of the more rugged, so he created Ralph Lauren Black, right? So Ralph Lauren Black was kind of like this slightly more cosmopolitan, urban, but edgy, sporty vibe.
Cool.
Right?
Okay.
And Bell and Ross, the BR-01 and 03, the watch that came afterwards, literally became the watch that was worn on the model all the time.
Interesting, wow.
And so we'll show you an image of that now. And yeah, I find that really remarkable. And he is a watch guy. Now, what's really interesting is that every watch that was featured in a Ralph Lauren ad, right, was always a vintage watch. So it was a vintage Rolex, it was a vintage Cartier, or even a vintage Panerai. The only contemporary watch that he put inside of one of his ads was a BR-01.
That's cool.
And that is really a huge statement in terms of how powerful he felt the iconography of that was.
Got it.
The other thing that was really interesting about Bell and Ross was, you know, I remember I was in New York, and I was walking around like Barney's department store. So unfortunately Barney's is closed, but it was like the coolest store back in the day. It had the curation of all the cool designers, Tom Brown, like our friend is wearing, you know, like all the kind of like, you know, guys that are making a real evolution to style. And then the watch floor was really a place where people would gather as well. And it was really cool because you had this intersection of watches and contemporary culture and fashion, right? So the people that were walking through were interested in style, obviously, but they were really interested in watches too. And everyone would stop in front of the showcase where the Bell & Ross BR-01 was. Now, 46 mm, to be fair, even in the context of the era, was pretty large, right? You have to understand, you know, America being a land of rather large people, maybe it fits in the context of some risks there. But for a more universal look, right, in the next year, in 2006, what did they come up with?
Yeah, the iconic BR-03.
Right.
Yeah, so exactly is this piece, right? So of course now this is in ceramic, and I think it was launched with 42 mm, drastic decrease in size. And I think 2 years ago they released the very first time even 1 mm smaller with 41 mm.
Yeah, so the current watch that I'm wearing on my wrist, which was launched 2 years ago, is the BR-03-A, A for automatic, and this one was launched 2 years ago. It's in black ceramic, and it's 41 mm. And I have to say, it's interesting because when you diminish the size of something, sometimes it doesn't work. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
But it works super well on this.
And I gotta say, it looks much nicer, you know, like the original BR-03 is still large on my wrist, to be honest, 42 mm with a square case, huge wrist presence, but, you know, gotta say, man, with the 41 mm case, it does fit much, it's a big difference, to be honest, on the wrist.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of subtle work here also, just to make it as ergonomic as possible. And when you put it on, what's really nice about it is it feels great, you know? And the funny thing is now, so in 2005, now let's cut to 2025, it's 20 years later. What has happened to me?
You?
Yeah.
You got older.
Thank you, Constant. I have gotten older. It's funny, but what has happened is I need to wear these now,
Exactly.
right? So it's kind of funny because I always joke the day that you can afford a perpetual calendar is the day that you will never
see
be able to
anything.
read a perpetual calendar, right? And it's true. Like all my perpetual calendars, like I literally cannot read anything on them. And it's funny because I've actually gone back to wearing very basic watches so that I can read the time.
I actually noticed that.
Yes. So, you know, a few days ago I was wearing my Portuguese. So
Fucking
my
huge.
IWC Portuguese, well, in the context of when it was launched, it was like normal size. It was classic size, it was 42 mm, right? And yes, I get it. Everyone now is saying that the trend is small, but you know what? I like to be anti-trend. So when everything was big, I was like, you know what? I'm going to go classic and small. So I remember my first Reverso was a Classique, which was so small that mostly women were wearing it, but I don't care, right? And so now that everyone's like, you know, can you make it smaller? I'm like, no, I want it big. So, and this time, so I can actually read it, because I would like to be able to live my life without these. So when I look at this, I can read it perfectly. And I have to say, it's the perfect balance between legibility and style as well. Okay, so let's go from here. This was launched 2 years ago, and we're going to go into what we like to call Okay, if we can call this the past, let's go into what we call the present. And we're going to go into a skeleton watch in the BR-03
Exactly.
format, made in collaboration with the movement supplier Sellita. Tell us
That's
about
right.
that.
So this one was launched quite special. I mean, 41mm same. It retains the same 41mm ceramic case, but now features a new skeletonized movement. Right. So this is actually like what you said, a collaboration with Sellita, and this movement was specially made for Ben Ross.
Skeletonization, sometimes when you hear this word, you think of something that's really Baroque, but it wouldn't fit in the sort of design language that Bruno Bellamich has come up with. I also really like the idea that the dial is using smoked sapphire crystal.
Exactly.
So you see the movement, but you kind of don't see the movement, you know, and then you also have this massive application of loom on top of that sapphire dial, which creates a really nice kind of push and pull dynamic contrast between the interior content and this high visibility of the dial. So I'm going to put that on my wrist as well.
You know, one thing I gotta say, a lot of, I mean, I don't want to dig any brand, but the thing is like, you know, a lot of times skeleton watches suffer from legibility.
Yeah.
But I gotta say, you know, with the combination of big Arabic numerals, big markers, big hands, and also with that smoked sapphire, I think legibility is pretty good on this as well, you know?
Well, you know, the other thing too is that, I don't know if this happens to you, but like I'll wear a whole bunch of different stuff, right? Like I'll wear like a very complicated, well, I don't have a very complicated watch, but I'll wear a complicated watch, you know? Then I'll wear something indie, then I'll wear something vintage. And then at some point I'll be like, you know what? Just on the daily basis, I just want a simple time only. Like,
Yeah, I share the same sentiment.
I don't want to
as
say
well,
beater because I'm careful with my watches, but something pure, something rugged that I can wear, like, you know, doing sports or whatever like that. When I go to the gym or go for a bicycle ride or on my motorcycle, I don't have to worry about it. And probably also something that I can travel with
Exactly.
that I like, that feels great, that doesn't make me like
Still under the radar.
yeah, and that doesn't unfortunately make me a target
yeah.
in many of the capital cities of
Exactly,
Europe,
yeah.
where basically if you're wearing anything too flashy, right, or anything too perceived as high end, you're a bit of a
Kind of,
target.
yeah.
So I would say this actually fits all of those like criteria. I really dig this watch. And then let's talk about what represents the future of Bell & Ross's BR-03.
So we have this, really something very different from what we've seen from BR & Ross. This is the BR-X3. All right, this is the newest release from the brand. And of course comes with a very different language as well. I mean, it still retains a lot of the DNA of that original BR & Ross, you know, instrument, you know, design.
Yeah.
But yet, you know, look at that. You'd have such a avant-garde looking date, such an avant-garde looking power reserve. And this one comes with a Tennessee movement as well.
Yeah, it's really cool because one of the investors in Bell & Ross is Chanel,
Yes.
who clearly has very good taste in who they invest in because they've also invested in Francois Paul Journe, Roman Gauthier, and of course our dear friend Max Buser as well as of last year.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, they're Chanel, I mean.
Yeah, so Chanel has a percentage of Tennessee which is using, which is manufacturing movements for two other companies, Tudor, right, and also Breitling as
Exactly,
well.
yes.
So it's these three kind of companies, Chanel and its associated companies, Tudor and Breitling, that get to use these movements. They're at an extremely high level of quality,
Exactly.
very, very reliable.
Strong tolerance as well.
Yeah, the guy, it's funny because the guy that's running Tennessee is a guy I know. His name is, well, I don't know if he's, I hope he hasn't retired because I really love this guy. His name is Jean-Paul Girardin, and he used to be the VP of, or Deputy CEO of Breitling.
Oh, okay.
Right. So he knows how to make very efficient automatic movements. Now this is a really lovely one because it's got two huge apertures which are framed by these kind of like, I would call them wing-shaped like skeletonization on the dial. On one side you have a power reserve indicator which really retains that kind of instrument vibe.
Yeah.
And then on the other side you've got the date wheel as well. And it's a really nice balance on the
I
dial.
like the power reserve, you see, it's like 1, 2, and 3. It's like 1 day, 2 days, because it's a 3 days power reserve watch.
Yeah.
So it's simple, right?
Well, again, you know, high visibility and very simple but easy to understand information. And so I like the fact that Bruno has retained all of that design purity even when he's approached a contemporary watch like that. And on the wrist, I gotta say it's good. So the one I'm wearing is in titanium.
Exactly.
So it's in two shades of titanium. You've got the top and the bottom of the case is sandblasted gray titanium, and then the mid case is in black titanium. And it creates a nice kind of like layered effect, the same kind of push and pull multi-layered effect that you get on the dial. And what are you wearing, Constance?
So this is the stainless steel version. Comes with a mid case that's in, it's kind of like a mid case. I think it's just a section of mid case. It's in blue colored.
Yeah.
But it has a blue dial with a blue strap. No, I think this is it's the color that always works, man. stainless steel and blue.
So we were requested by one of the gentlemen that's in the room with us to make an association between these watches and music. There's a couple of them that come off the top of my head, right? I would say, so there's a great documentary on Australian rock and roll on YouTube right now. And one of my favorite, if you would like to narrow it down in terms of one of your all-time favorite bands, like it's a hard question, but I would say one of mine would be AC/DC. Right?
Okay.
Why? Because AC/DC, you know, so they came out in the 70s. They're from Australia. They like ruled the Australian bar scene, right?
Yeah.
They're the hardest working dudes in rock and roll. They played like 2,000 shows in the bar scene in Australia in like the first year they started playing, or the first couple of years that they started playing, and then they moved to London. When they were in London, what's going on in the late 70s? Punk rock, right?
Oh,
so
70s punk
but
rock.
they didn't. They decided not to become punk rock. They stuck with what they do, right? So a lot of people define like AC/DC as like metal or whatever. AC/DC is just amazing fundamental rock and roll.
Okay.
And they never diverted from that, right? They just stuck to what they were amazing at. And because of that, I would say their music is classic today.
Got it.
Right? It's kind of like Ralph Lauren, right? Like Ralph Lauren in the 90s, he became co-opted by, like his clothing became co-opted by the hip hop culture.
Got it.
And so I remember asking him, did you then decide to make your clothing more hip hop? He said, no. The reason they liked it to begin with, because I did what I did. So I will not deviate from that, right? And that's what I like about Bell & Ross. It doesn't deviate. Of course, it understands that maybe sizes have changed. You want to add greater visual richness. You want to add higher quality in terms of ceramic cases, or this really cool new movement with Solida. But Bell & Ross does Bell & Ross. And I think that is really important, because we have seen other brands try to deviate and try to become fashionable. And when you do that, you lose your DNA. And I think that there's a real purity, a real soul in Bell & Ross because it didn't deviate. The other thing is AC/DC. You listen to it and you're like, wow, there must be so many guitarists on this band, right? There's one guitarist. It's freaking Angus Young, right? That's how amazing that he is, right? So sometimes simplicity can create amazing power. I think that that's what I love about Bell & Ross. So that's my musical analogy. I'm looking at the guy in the room. Did I get it right? Okay, so I think I got it right. So guys, thank you for tuning in. If you like our content, don't forget to
like, share, and subscribe. And also comment below, because we always love to hear your thoughts. And tell us, man, what is your what is your most iconic? If you own a Bell & Ross, what is the most iconic Bell & Ross that you actually want or actually own? Tell us a little bit more, and we would love to hear all of them.
And in the meantime, long live rock and roll.